On the broadcast tonight, are bonuses part of ordinary wages? Well, the nation's top court says yes in a landmark ruling that establishes a final guideline on a prolonged dispute over that question. Thousands of rail workers march on with their strike for a 10th day in one of the longest walkouts in the nation's history. Korea's prime minister urges them to get back to work as the government has no plans to privatize the network. And Seoul and Washington see eye to eye on the need to step up joint efforts to prepare for all possible scenarios regarding North Korea following the rogue state's execution of its second most powerful figure last week. Early edition begins now. It is 4 a.m. in Washington, 10 in Stuttgart, and 6 on a Wednesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. A ruling that could impact Korea's labor relations and business activities. That's our starting point today.
Right, Korea's Supreme Court on this Wednesday ruled that fixed bonuses will be included as part of ordinary wages, which gives laborers an upper hand. Now, this means similar lawsuits filed by workers from major manufacturers like Hyundai Motor and General Motors could also succeed, something that would bring about an additional $13 billion in labor costs. Well, workers from different sectors who heavily rely on overtime pay have launched numerous lawsuits against basic wages, demanding changes to the system. President Park Geun-hye promised the business leaders, including GM Chairman Dan Akerson, back in May during her state visit to the U.S. to resolve the labor wage issue. Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye has called for reforms in the education system and the labor market to tackle the rising youth unemployment rate. During the second meeting of the Presidential Youth Committee Wednesday, President Park emphasized the importance of creating a business ecosystem in which young people can be evaluated for their capabilities and competence rather than for their educational background alone. Now, the Korean leader also urged colleges to give students the skills they need to succeed in today's world and called for early adoption of a system that would allow college students to work and study at the same time. Well, the president also vowed full government support to enhance the country's employment policy. The number of mid-sized companies here in Korea saw a sharp increase this year. According to a report released by the Small and Medium Business Administration on this Wednesday, the total number of mid-sized companies currently stands at about 2,500, a 76% increase compared to the end of 2012. Well, the administration attributes the jump to the government's new definition of what constitutes a smaller business, which took effect in 2012. The average mid-sized company in Korea has an annual revenue of $216 million and employs roughly 400 people. By sector, retail and distributing services made up more than half of the total.
In the tech realm, Korean government has unveiled plans to begin testing the next generation mobile technology, 5G, in 2018. This should help solidify its position as a global leader in mobile network services. Our Yoo Li-an reports.
Only a fifth of the global population now has access to the latest mobile network technology, 4G LTE. But Korea is already gearing up to introduce the next generation mobile technology, 5G. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning on Tuesday announced plans to test the 5G network starting in 2018, with the goal of launching the service by 2020. The 5G wireless network will allow mobile phones to transmit data 1,000 times faster than the current 4G LTE. With the breakthrough technology, Korea is aiming to overtake the U.S. and rise to first place in terms of mobile patent competitiveness. Now, Korea already tops the list in terms of revenue growth from its mobile services. Strategy Analytics on Tuesday said Korea saw its mobile revenue grew by the most of 4% during the July to September period, while that of U.S. grew by 3% and Japan by 1%. The market researcher attributed Korea's rapid revenue growth to the increasing number of people switching to 4G mobile phones. Yurian, Arirang News.
A G20 meeting on the global economy and joint efforts to mitigate the ripple effects from the fiscal policies of advanced countries was held on Wednesday here in Seoul. Speculations about the possible tapering of stimulus measures by the U.S. Federal Reserve loomed. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Just one day before, the Federal Reserve is set to announce whether it will be scaling back its bond-buying stimulus measures, policymakers from the world over gathered in Seoul for a G20 meeting hosted by Korea's finance ministry, where the possible effects on emerging markets topped the agenda.
To minimize disruption in the global financial market stemming from the QE taper, the G20 should continue to cooperate to manage the exit in an orderly manner.
The International Monetary Fund's Deputy Director of Strategy Policy and Review Department said government intervention would be critical in the event of volatility in the markets. He went on to say that Korea remains relatively safe compared to other emerging economies.
Korea has a very good and strong set of basic fundamental macroeconomic policy frameworks, and therefore it should, and it's also got deep financial markets, and therefore it should, as it has thus far, be able to cope with tapering without too much difficulty.
The meeting, which was held in cooperation with the Finance Ministry of Australia, the chair of next year's G20 meetings, marks the first of its kind hosted by Korea since the G20 summit in 2010. 200 officials and experts from the academic world were also in attendance. Apart from spillovers stemming from major economies' monetary policies, the participants also shared their views on the overall global economic conditions and achievements and challenges facing the G20. When the conference wraps up on Thursday, 31 of the participants will head to the Kaesong Industrial Complex for a tour of the facilities there. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Well, relations between Seoul and Tokyo took another step back this Wednesday, with Korea lodging a complaint with the Japanese embassy here in Seoul over Tokyo's most recent unjustified claim to Korea's Dokdo Islets. Here's Arirang News Ji Myung-gil with the latest development on that front.
Korea on Wednesday summoned the deputy chief of the Japanese embassy in Seoul, Takashi Kurai, to protest Japan's renewed claims to Korea's easternmost islet of Dokdo. It comes one day after Tokyo released a new national security strategy outline, which places a priority for a resolution to the standoff over the islets which Korea controls. Through Kurai, Korea's foreign ministry protested the fresh claim and demanded that Tokyo delete the Dokdo issue immediately from its security paper. Kurai said he would convey the message to the Japanese government. Seoul's foreign ministry took a strong tone Wednesday in response to the new defense policy paper.
The Japanese government's most recent unjustified claim to Dokdo in the form of a national security strategy raises doubts about Tokyo's sincerity in improving relations between Korea and Japan.
Japan's new defense policy package approved by the cabinet includes a 10-year national security strategy and a 5-year military build-up plan. It defines North Korea's nuclear and missile development programs as major threats and names China as a country trying to change the status quo in Northeast Asia. Japan says its security plan is defensive in nature. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States are going over all possible scenarios in light of the political upheaval in Pyongyang following the sudden purge and execution of Kim Jong-un's once powerful uncle. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
In light of the sudden removal of North Korea's former number 2 man, Chang Song-taek, South Korea and the U.S. held a high-level meeting Tuesday in Washington to formulate responses to all possible scenarios that could emerge in the North. South Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Kyu-hyun and U.S. Deputy Secretary William Burns vowed to enhance joint defense preparations to better prepare for the possibility of North Korea's provocations. They also agreed that the instability in North Korea could encourage the leadership to launch a provocation at some point in the near future to solidify its power base. The South Korean official said Seoul will maintain its current defense status to deter Pyongyang, but stressed that, when necessary, South Korea was ready to take additional measures. Kim also highlighted the Seoul-Washington alliance and Seoul-Tokyo ties as the key factors that ensure peace and stability in Northeast Asia. In terms of diplomacy and security on the Korean peninsula, the two Koreas, U.S., China, Japan, and Russia play key roles and are also the members of the long-stalled six-party talks aimed at denuclearizing North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And staying with North Korea, under the rule of Kim Jong-un, the North has successfully launched a rocket and conducted a third nuclear test. In the last of our three-part series on Kim's first 2 years in power, we look at how far North Korea's nuclear program has come and where it's headed. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Peace, national prosperity, and happiness of the citizens all come with strong nuclear power.
Kim Jong-un has made it clear that North Korea will never give up its nuclear program. And during his 2 years in power, the young leader has taken steps toward making the North a nuclear state.
The first one, the explosion power has increased. At the same time, now they enter into the new step that are focusing on miniaturizing and how to put this warhead into the long-range missiles.
But the significant steps in its nuclear program has taken Pyongyang further away from its closest ally, Beijing, as the North ignored China's warnings and went ahead with a rocket launch last December and a third nuclear test in February. Since then, China has joined in on international sanctions against the North and has steadily increased the economic pressure on its northern neighbor in order to get it to denuclearize and return to dialogue. Experts say Pyongyang's constant belligerent actions have created a pretext for the expansion of U.S. involvement in the region, which is certainly not in Beijing's interest.
For China, the denuclearization of North Korea is important, but so is the maintenance of peace and stability in the North and the Korea-U.S.-Japan-East Asia-Pacific rebalance policy.
But as much as the North does not want to break its ties with China, a nuclear-free North Korea does not seem an option for now.
There hasn't been a sufficient reduction in the security threats in the region and between the two Koreas for the North to end its nuclear program. So as a result, Pyongyang continues to have difficulty with making the strategic decision to denuclearize.
Beyond that, the communist state constantly proclaims that it was the dying wish of great leader Kim Il-sung and dear leader Kim Jong-il for the North to hold on to its nuclear weapons. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to Japan, the island nation says it will build up its fighter jet fleet amid a growing territorial row with its neighboring countries. NHK reported Wednesday that Tokyo's defense ministry plans to replace roughly 100 planes in its F-15 fighter jet fleet with F-35s, which have stealth capabilities. Now, the move comes as the cabinet on Tuesday agreed to raise its military budget by 5% over the next 5 years. NHK said the plan is designed to allow Japan to demonstrate its military superiority following China's unilateral decision to expand its aerial defense zone, while the two countries are embroiled in a dispute over the sovereignty of a group of islands in the East China Sea.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life.
Plans to visit experts.
Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2 points. Turning now to the latest on the nationwide rail strike. The government wants an immediate end to the strike, while a union of cargo truck drivers say it won't pick up freight that's not being delivered because of the railway strike. Our Shin Se-min has all the latest.
The government is taking a hardline stance on the nationwide railway strike that entered its 10th day on Wednesday. Prime Minister Chung Won called out striking railway union members on Wednesday, demanding they return to work as their strike is inconveniencing the public. Chung also said that the government would aim to end the strike by strictly enforcing the laws he says it's breaking. The state-owned Korea Railroad Corporation has called in around 150 Korail union members as part of its investigation into losses in compensation resulting from the strike. Union members continue to demand that the government scrape a plan to establish a new rail operator, something they claim is a first step toward privatization. Prosecutors announced Wednesday that they're now seeking arrest warrants for 18 more union members, in addition to the 10 warrants issued Monday. Cargo trains continue to be hit hardest by the strike. They've seen a roughly 50% decrease in operations. A union of cargo truck drivers, 12,000 strong, said Wednesday that it won't pick up the freight that's not being delivered because of the railway strike. The strike is already the railway industry's largest ever, and the reduced railway services nationwide is directly affecting commuters. Korail reduced its KTX Express trains by 12% Tuesday, and regular passenger trains are running on restricted schedules at 60% of their normal levels.
Usually there will be trains every hour, but because of the strike, I now have to wait for more than 2 hours for trains.
Since the strike began last Monday, some 8,000 union workers have walked off from the job. In that time, about 900 have crossed back across the picket line. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Moving on to the art scene, the Korean National Ballet's next artistic director, Kang Soo-jin, says her goal during her tenure is to elevate the troupe's status in the international arena. At a press conference on Wednesday, the legendary Korean ballerina, who is currently a principal dancer at the Stuttgart Ballet, said she accepted the position with the hope that she can parlay her successful international career into success for the company. She said that what's needed to achieve that goal is teamwork and respect. Kang was the first Asian dancer to win the International Prix de Lausanne competition in 1985 and was awarded the prestigious Prix Benoit de la Danse in 1999. Let's hear part of her interview with Arirang TV.
I'm very honored and very, very happy and very thankful. It's very important to work teamwork, so I will try my best, not hurry to work to be the best from today to tomorrow. I'll be working with everybody step by step, so please watch us.
And there you have it. She will begin her 3-year term as the head of the National Ballet Company in February. She will give her farewell performance as a dancer in 2016.
Now, every year on this December 18th, the world marks the United Nations International Migrants Day to recognize the efforts, contributions, and rights of migrants worldwide.
And Korea is no exception. The number of migrant workers in the country has risen dramatically over the past decade.
And with a looming demographic crunch driven by one of the world's lowest birth rates here, the reliance on foreign labor is likely to spread more broadly in this increasingly mature economy.
And so we wanted to take this opportunity to take a closer look into the current status of migrant workers in Korea and what needs to be done to improve their situation here.
Right, and we have a special guest in the studio this evening, Kwak Jae-seok, director of the Migration and Diaspora Research Institute. Mr. Kwak, it's great to have you with us.
My welcome. Yeah.
Now, could you first explain to us what we should remember on this International Migrants Day? Where does Korea stand in terms of migrant workers?
Yes, as you said, the international society is now experiencing the globalization. So easy communication and convenient transportation makes people go abroad from one country to other country. So Korea is no exception at all. So now, as a result, Korea now experiencing lots of problems because of this international migration. For example, violation of human rights and exploitation of basic freedom, something like that. So we need to celebrate the International Migrant Day as in public. So, and at the same time, we need to participate to the International Convention on the protection of the right of all migrants' work and members of their families, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, last year, or rather this year and there's been some significant changes in the status of immigrants living in Korea, namely one individual, a Jasmine Lee. She is an immigrant from the Philippines. She was one of the few Filipinos that made it into the big screens in Korea as an actress. And also she became the first foreign-born member of the Korean legislature. And she has been pushing for reforms, of course, to make it easier for foreign workers in Korea. But have those policies materialized and been reflected in recent days?
During the last 10 years, Korean government has expanded in government budget and lots of programs in multicultural policies. They expending lots of money for make a better life for migrants in Korea. But still, we need no satisfaction at all. So there is lots of problems, systematic control or collaboration between ministry, agencies, something like that. So more delicate, more elaborated policy needed for better in the field.
So definitely there needs to be more better communication, cooperation, collaboration between the government and the institutions and the individuals in order for these to materialize so that the everyday lives of the migrant workers could improve. Now, so what are some major obstacles or difficulties that these migrant workers living in Korea face today?
As I said, now in government level, many ministries are participating, making policy regarding migrants in Korea. There is no coordination at all. So the program of each ministries are similar, and they spend lots of money for the same policy effects. So even though we have lots of money, we don't feel effect at all in the field. And then next, we need some kind of balance between policies. In multicultural policy in Korea, is too much oriented to the international marriage spouse, something like that. So international migrants, or for example, foreign workers or the foreign students, there's lots of varieties of foreign migrants in Korea, are all excluded from this kind of policy support and services. That's main problem these days.
So we have a lot of policies that overlap, and some of them don't really apply to many of the different individual foreigners in Korea. In terms of individuals in Korea, what do you think needs to be done? I mean, do you think we still have a long way to go in terms of opening up and embracing them, or just embracing them as one of our own in Korea? We still feel that certain bit of a distance here between Koreans and migrants in Korea, right?
For continuous development of Korea, we need import. We have to accept foreign migrants. That's our survival for Korea. That's important. But Korean people in domestic doesn't have any kind of procession to embrace the international migrants in Korea. So we need some kind of education for international recognition or perception for the migrants. Why we need migrants in Korea, and education is very important. And the other one is we need a control tower for the migration policy. Too many ministerial agencies are participating and spending money too much. So we need make a government agency coordinating, controlling all this kind of problem for better solution for the international migrants in Korean society.
So basically, one control tower that can overlook all the policies being implemented. All right, Kwak Jae-seok, Director of the Migration and Diaspora Research Institute, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Time now to get a check on the weather conditions, and for that we go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, today felt slightly warmer than yesterday.
That's right, Kan-young. In fact, numbers were about 4 degrees higher than seasonal averages here in Seoul.
But apparently wisdom shows us that we shouldn't get too used to it, I hear, right?
That's right, Daniel. Temperatures will take a big dip tomorrow with the daytime high in Seoul forecast to remain below 0 degrees. Well, currently the East Coast regions are getting some snow showers, not to mention that the Jeollado and Chungcheongdo and Gangwon-do and the mountains of Jeju are forecast to get about another 1 to 5 centimeters of snow through tomorrow. Taking a closer look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -6 degrees with a high of -2. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju hit 3 and 2 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, Jeju remains at 5 degrees while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 6 and -11 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Bo-kyung. And that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Chan.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.